Okay, they're calling this a probability problem, but when you read through it, I think you'll discover that it's actually testing your ability to solve quadratic equations more than anything else. The probability equation is given to us as a P equation, and we're clearly told that we want the probability to end up being 0.8. So if you plug 0.8 into the P spot, you end up with negative, 0.8 equals negative 0.04 d squared, which represents days, plus 0.4 d. Don't like these decimals at all, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply everything by 100, which I can totally do legally. Negative 4d squared plus 40d. Now, I'm just going to bring everything over here. That gives me 4d squared minus 40d plus 80 equals 0. If I divide everything by 4 right here, that'll actually make things pretty easy because I'll be left with d squared minus 10d plus 20 equals 0. Okay? Now notice, I have not just made my 4's disappear. I divided both sides of the equation by 4. Now here's where you can choose. You can choose to solve using the quadratic equation. I don't think factoring will work, so it's going to be the quadratic equation or completing the square. So I'm going to use completing the square because I like it. D squared minus 10d. So this 20 is the problem child. I'm going to bring the 20 over here because I can. And we need to create a parking space right here for our perfect square trinomial. Now, before I figure out what goes right here in my perfect square trinomial, I usually write down what the factored version is going to be. So that's where this empty set of parentheses is coming from. So I know I'm going to have a d here, and then half of the middle term of the trinomial. Well, the middle term of the trinomial is negative 10. So half of that is negative 5. Okay, so that's why I wrote d minus 5 here, and then of course I have to square that. That's where I get my plus 25. Now, if I'm going to add plus 25 to this side, I certainly have to add plus 25 to this side to keep my equation balanced. So now I have equals 5. Okay. Now it's really looking pretty easy because all I have to do to finish this out is take the square root of both sides. So if I take the square root of this and the square root of this, remember the plus or minus option. So when you take the square root of something squared, it's just itself. So d minus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 5. Bring this 5 over here. We have 5 plus or minus the square root of 5. Now, I will tell you that when you take 5 minus the square root of 5, you're going to get approximately 2.8 days, okay? When you take 5 plus the square root of 5, you're going to get, I'm thinking it's like 7 days or something like that. Now, why do we not write that answer down? Because I have a feeling the sales clerk isn't going to be looking to work more days than she has to, or he has to, okay? So how many days a week should the sales clerk work for the probability of making sales to be 0.8? 3 days, okay? Obviously not going to just work part of a day. So we're going to round this up to 3 days. Or it could also be, let me just make sure I've got that right here. Could also be 7.2 days, but technically we're not going to include that because we're not going to work more days than we have to.